friends, let's talk about the 10 early signs of colon cancer. Keep in mind that these symptoms are non-specific, they're very common, and just because you have them, it doesn't mean that you have cancer. It could be that you're eating something that's irritating your gut, and removing that irritant can restore your balance. That's why it's important to understand the full explanation of what these signs mean, so that you will know how to restore balance to your body. And I'm sure you'll be really surprised at several of these signs because other influencers, they simply don't talk about them. And it's frankly because they don't actually treat people with colon cancer. Now, this should be an empowering video to learn how to tell you you have a healthy gut. And of course, if you have any of these signs and would like to further explore what it means, always talk to your own personal medical doctor. In life, it's always good to get a different perspective because when you ignore signs and symptoms, well, then cancer can grow unchecked and can cause unfortunate consequences. And imagine one day you may be doubling over with nausea and pain only to hear the words that can change everything. There's a mass in your colon and part of your gut may need to be removed. That's literally what happened to my friend who happens to be a plastic surgeon. Now, even his elite surgical skills, it didn't protect him because he ignored the warning signs for probably at least several months. It's a stark example of what happens when we put self-care last. Now, the first symptom is excess mucus in the stool. Now, excessive mucus signals your gut has an irritant, and that irritant could be cancer. Now, sure, some mucus is normal, but is your mucus healthy? So let me show you what it does and why it's there and how to get it healthy. So this represents mucus. It's pretty slimy and goopy, right? Ever cough up something like that? Mucus from your respiratory tree? So mucus is good for your body. It's good for your gut to protect you against germs. And so let me show you what I mean. So you see how slimy this is? This is pretty much goop, right? I'm gonna put some in my hands. It's goopy, it's slimy, viscous like mucus, yeah? You know, kind of nasty, right? And of course, this isn't human mucus. If it was, it could still be black. I've seen black mucus from people. And I have here a container that I put a hole in. So I put this knife in to puncture it. Let me make sure the hole is a hole, right? And then what I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna show you, I'm gonna put a chopstick through this hole to prove to you that I have a hole here, all right? And I'm gonna layer the bottom layer with mucus, and then I'm gonna pour water in this container over my phone. And yeah, it's a working phone, right? Whoops. Yeah, it's a working phone. So, right, it works. But I'm gonna put this layer of mucus in, okay? Because this is what your body does. It makes a layer of mucus underneath or in your colon, the lumen of your colon, okay? And what it does is it'll serve to protect you. And this is how it protects you, right? So I'm gonna cover up the entire layer. We make sure that it's nice and healthy. Yeah, this is pretty goopy, slimy stuff. Now, of course, I've never done this before. So nice layer, right? Pretty slimy. All right, let's see if I pour it on the side, if that's still gonna work. And gently, right, on the side. It actually holds up right now, okay. Probably going to eventually leak, right? But so far so good, not wet. My phone is dry. Okay, now it's dripping because now it's permeated my mucus. Okay, so the whole point of that experiment is to show you what mucus can do for you, protect you and separate things, but at the same time, it's really fragile. And like the slimy goop in your gut, the mucus is designed to keep certain things out like bile acids and germs because there is a fragile layer of skin underneath called the epithelium with holes that lead inside your body. And when you get bile, a detergent or another irritant, toxins, that can ruin the tissue and allow germs to cross or germ parts to cross. And that makes your body super sick. So mucus protects your body like paint protecting your home. When I first moved in my house, the movers, they took a chunk of stucco and paint off. That stressed me out and stressed my home out. And likewise, the wrong stress can damage your colon, can damage that mucus like tumors. And that's why you see mucus in your poop. So there are lots of things that can damage your mucus, including not eating fiber. And why? Because fiber prevents your own germs from eating your mucus. So notice how when you get sick, you make more mucus in your respiratory tree. Well, guess what happens? That germs live on that mucus and it eats it. It's its food. So the more mucus you make, the happier your germs get. And the goal is not to make more mucus in your gut than you actually need, because too much of it can change your absorption of nutrients. The goal is to keep that balance, a healthy balance of mucus. And that is through eating whole foods with fiber that feed your gut microbiome. So any food that doesn't have any fiber is not going to feed the right microbes. And then those microbes are going to get hungry because that's their main food source. And they will chew on your mucus and create holes that then will cause you to leak. Remember, your body is not static. You may not notice the subtle changes that goes inside your body, but your body today is not the same body you have tomorrow. And this is simply because your body is constantly remodeling. For example, if you have a paper cut in your finger, you may notice that remodeling because the paper cut activates your senses, pain and redness. Just like your thoughts, your body has a choice on whether or not it wants to repair that paper cut. And it can choose not to repair the paper cut when it's busy doing something else, like fighting cancer. So that brings us to sign number 2, difficulty healing wounds. If you have a wound on your finger, you'll see it. But if you have a wound in your colon, an ulcer, you won't see it. And these wounds can represent colon cancer. However, wounds elsewhere always struggle if you have any type of cancer. Even your paper cut will struggle to heal because cancer causes a chronic inflammatory state because it occupies your immune system and it turns on your immune system the wrong way. It prevents it from having balance to keep you healthy. And when you have wounds, that actually leads to more inflammation no matter where your wounds are. And those wounds itself, if it's chronic, it can increase your risk of having a cancer starting in that wound. So for example, people with chronic ulcers in the colon, like those with inflammatory bowel disease, or those taking medications long-term that can cause ulcers, if you have persistent chronic ulcers, that does give you a higher risk of colon cancer. But to be clear, most colon cancers, they do not begin as classic ulcers in the same way that stomach ulcers do. Instead, colon cancer usually begins as chronic microscopic injury, like a tiny ulcer, to the mucosa, which then progresses to ulceration as the disease advances. So in other words, ulcers are often a consequence of cancer development. But in some settings, chronic wounds or chronic ulcers can also be the start from where cancer forms. And in the colon, the usual starting point is repeated epithelial damage, that layer below the mucus, in which it has chronic inflammation caused by bacteria and its toxins or toxins in your food, bile acids, oxidative stress, or simply your immune system getting activated over a prolonged period of time. And over time, this then leads to a loss of the protective mucus layer. It breaks down the tight junctions that keep your cells together, that wall, and that increases leakage or permeability. Because when that barrier fails, bacteria and their metabolites and the toxins in your food, it penetrates into deep tissue. This triggers DNA damage, abnormal signal repairing, and uncontrolled cell growth. And once tissue can no longer regenerate normally, then that little tiny wound becomes an ulcer, a crater. And then cancer actually may be present underneath that whole scene. And this is especially well documented in chronic inflammatory conditions. In long-standing ulcerative colitis, for example, continuous ulceration and then regeneration, it dramatically increases colon cancer risks. So in this case, colon cancer doesn't arise from a polyp. It arises from chronically inflamed, ulcerated mucosa, where then the stem cells are forced into a constant repair mode. And the longer the wound or the ulceration persists, the higher the mutation burden. Even outside of inflammatory bowel disease, ulcerated lesions in the colon, they are super concerning. And colon cancer frequently presents as an ulcerated mass because cancer just outgrows its own blood supply. This causes the end of the tissue to be necrotic, to die. And then that surface breaks down, especially when you eat food, it causes mechanical trauma. When a doctor looks at it with a camera, a colonoscopy, the lesions look like non-healing ulcers, which is a red flag. And a key distinction is that benign ulcers, they tend to heal once the cause is removed. Whereas cancer-associated ulcers, they actually persist, they deepen, they bleed easily, and then they distort and irritate the tissue around them and the tissue beneath them. And the only way you would know that you have cancer is to do a colonoscopy. So you can imagine that any kind of barrier breakdown is going to lead you to more health problems like infections, right? Because that barrier is protecting you from germs. So this leads us to number 3, unexplained infections with E. coli. Now, E. coli is a normal and good microbe. We all have it. It's part of our healthy microbiome. But when the E. coli gets in your blood, that's not so healthy. And that E. coli can form an abscess in your colon. That's also not so healthy. And why is it doing that? What's the $1,000,000 answer? Well, the only way to know is to hunt for a source. And if nobody can explain why you have an E. coli infection in your bloodstream or an abscess in your gut, then really somebody needs to take a camera and take some tissue biopsy to make sure you don't have cancer. And you can imagine being super tired when your body is fighting an infection like E. coli, right?
Hi, friends. I am so thrilled that you want to take charge of your health and take charge of your food. Now, I know nutrition can be complex, but it doesn't have to be. And I'm here to support you in this lifelong journey. So if you point your camera app to this QR code, it'll take you to a link for a free handout that I created just for you. And if you like it, if you want to see other handouts, please go to the link in my show notes, and then you can leave me your feedback on what I could do to help you in your journey. Okay, back to the video now.
So that brings us to sign number 4, persistent fatigue that doesn't go away with rest. Cancer is highly metabolic. It's an energy demanding state of your body, and it's really part of your body. You know how your kids are sleeping all the time and then they have this growth spurt? Well, that's the same thing with cancer. It is basically sucking all the energy out of you so that you're tired, so that it can have a growth spurt 24/7. And what is it sucking? It's sucking nutrients away from your normal tissue. But you can only eat so much food, right? So it ends up taking first dibs on whatever you're eating. Heard sugar feeds cancer? Yep. So does protein, and so does fats. The goal is not to make it readily accessible for your cancer to grow. And the best way to do that is to eat ingredients that fight cancer along with your calories. And some people do this by swallowing a chemotherapeutic agent, right? With their food. But did you know that your food can have ingredients that also kills cancer? And there are lots of natural ingredients that fit this profile, from red azuki beans to blueberries. Those colors are cancer-fighting chemicals. And the second way cancer sucks your energy up is to revving up your immune system in the wrong way. In a perfect world, your immune system should have caught that cancer and should have beat it up, put it in jail, but somehow it escaped detection. That's like a guard not paying attention and letting a burglar just walk right through your home. And then on top of that, it's stealing all your stuff and it does nothing about it. In the meantime, it's destroying your house. So cancer causes low-grade inflammation by stimulating your immune system to secrete tiring cytokines like interleukin-6 and TNF-alpha. And literally, it makes you tired. In addition, when you have a leaky gut, even if the germs don't directly cross the gut barrier, parts of the germs, like endotoxin, can cross and trigger a massive inflammatory response, causing cytokines to be released and make you feel tired. And then the foods that you eat can exacerbate the problem. So for example, when you eat saturated fat, it's been documented that you will have more endotoxin leak into your bloodstream. So you can feel more tired after you eat a heavy meal, right? And oftentimes the cancer is in such a hurry to go that it really sacrifices the quality of its growth. Ever stay in a home that was built so cheaply that you know the builder didn't take any pride in their craftsmanship? That's cancer. Cancer tissue is usually very delicate, friable, and bloody. But initially, the bleeding can be so tiny that it's diluted in the blackness of your stool. However, you may see blood on your toilet paper when you wipe, and that would be sign number 5. You got to check your toilet paper, folks. When you're actively moving your gut by pushing the contents of food down, that causes friction to rub against the cancer. And remember, it's pretty weak, so it bleeds. And when you see enough blood being lost, you'll see sign number 6. Blood that is around your stool or in your toilet bowl. It can turn your stool a shade of pink. And if this is happening, you gotta go see a medical doctor. And when your body can't make up for the loss of blood fast enough, you become anemic, which reduces the amount of oxygen to your tissues, compounding the fatigue. And that's sign number 7, unexplained iron deficiency anemia. Now, the solution to the problem isn't just to take more iron, because you're literally losing the iron from losing blood. The solution is to plug up the leak. And you can't plug up the leak unless you can get to the area. And if you don't plug up the leak, it's just gonna get worse. So the way to plug up the hole goal is simply to get rid of the cancer. And that may require more than one physician and surgeon. And hence, a colonoscopy is required to look at the very minimum to tell us what's going on. And most people, we don't appreciate our body. We don't think of it as being miraculous. There's so many moving parts pulling your body in so many different directions, literally stressing it out throughout the day. And if you have a competent immune system, then you got no problem. You got it. It'll keep upgrading your house so that you can do what you need to do. In fact, it could build it better if you give it the right nutrients. Because when you feel well, your body is doing a great job in repairing itself, but it doesn't mean the stress isn't there. It doesn't mean cancer isn't there. And normally stress should go away. Kind of like when you exercise, when you stop exercising, that exercise stress goes away, right? Well, when you have cancer, there's no break. Your body is stressed out 24/7, and your entire body is rebuilding constantly, from your gut mucus to the skin on the outside. Mucus is so important that God gave you 2 layers of mucus, a double layer, made largely of glycosylated mucin proteins produced by goblet cells. And for those of you who didn't understand a single word I just said, let me explain the terminology. Glycosylation means that there's a sugar molecule on top of a protein molecule that makes mucus in your colon. Mucus doesn't just come out of nowhere. Your body has to make it, and your body has the ability to produce a lot of it or not produce any of it. And if it doesn't make any, you got none. And when you have none, you have no barrier against the germs that live in your gut. And we talked about what happens when germs get through. They cause chronic inflammation. They're great when they stay outside, just like the bugs on your lawn. You want it outside. You don't want to be roommates with your bugs, right? And the way to keep your mucus layer healthy is to eat enough carbohydrates and protein to keep all the germs out, because they're all bad when they get inside your house or your body. The germs belong in the lumen of your colon, and the mucus layer keeps it there. The inner mucus is a dense and normally permeable to bacteria, but the outer layer is looser and supports the growth of bacteria, good bacteria. And this layered structure is really essential from separating gut microbes from your epithelial tissue, the tissue underneath, to preserve a happy balance in your body. The thing is, your colon has all different kinds of microbes, 100 trillions of them, from E. coli to anaerobes. We literally all have E. coli, but there are friendly E. coli, and then there are pathogenic strains of E. coli that can actually destroy your mucus and invade your tissue. Ever heard of the saying, keep your friends close and your enemies even closer? Now, this isn't an exact quote from a Bible, but Jesus does command us to love those who hate you and bless those who curse you and pray for those who mistreat you. And obviously the Bible is talking about relationships with people, but in reality, this is also true for your relationship with your gut microbiome. Like I said, there are hundreds of trillions of microbes, and some of them love you, some of them hate you, some of them want to just live with you, and others want to kill you. And your gut is separated by a thin layer of mucus. And think about that, how easy it was for me to destroy my mucus. It's not much different. It sloughs off faster than your cells can make it when you have a leaky gut. You can imagine that if this is happening to you, you're not going to feel so well. And that brings us to sign number 8, bloating or persistent or intermittent abdominal discomfort. Remember that the largest nerve outside your brain is in your gut. It's called the vagus nerve, and it communicates directly to your brain. So whenever your gut doesn't feel well, when it's unhappy, your brain is also unhappy and is preoccupied with your gut. And you can't mentally disconnect it, right? Because I'm sure when you're throwing up, you're not thinking about your retirement account or that fancy car in your driveway. You're just preoccupied about your gut. And when you have cancer, even if it's really small, it's irritating your gut lining. It's destroying your mucus, and it can cause you discomfort and bloating. Your colon isn't there for you to just absorb water and be the home of microbes. It's actually there for you to expel toxins, for you to poop. And that brings us to pencil-shaped stools. When there's a cancer, it basically closes off your colonic lumen, which is essentially a pipe. And under normal conditions, the colon's diameter varies by segment. The cecum is the widest part, and it can reach up to 9 centimeters in a healthy way. The transverse colon is usually about 6 to 7 centimeters, and the sigmoid colon is even smaller. It's typically about 4 to 5 centimeters. centimeters, about the size of my pinky here. And these sizes already reflect the colonych's natural ability to stretch and store gas in stool. So basically, the diameter of your poop, if it's healthy, should be about the size of my pinky. But if your poop is consistently getting smaller and it becomes as thin as a pencil or the back of this knife, there's a problem. It's not relaxing appropriately, and that could represent a tumor blocking the pipe. And poop can tell you a lot about your health. Look at your poop, look in your toilet every time you pee and poop. If you see something that's unusual, talk to your medical doctor. If you're having unexplained diarrhea, then that's actually symptom number 9. Basically, changes in your bowel habits warrants a look for colon cancer. Remember, colon cancer disrupts how your colon normally works, from the mucus layer to how the muscles actually contract. It also changes what nutrients you're absorbing and what you're secreting. This whole disruption causes your stool to be inconsistent in shape and formation. And the best way to know if you have colon cancer is if you see someone to take a look and sample of tissue. But in reality, the number 1 symptom of colon cancer is no symptom at all. Most people are unaware of these changes because being tired, have a little bit of stool changing, having a little bit of distension and bloating, that's pretty common. They've gotten used to that being their normal. And remember, colon cancer, it doesn't start the day before. People have had cancer for years, 10 to 15 years before a diagnosis is actually made. So you can get used to feeling crappy, and that can just be your normal. That silent window is why colon cancer screening is super important, because most people only notice symptoms when it's late in the game. And at that point, you're losing bowel and potentially you can't get cured. We have an astronomical climbing rate of colon cancer because we've dramatically changed our diet. And if we don't fix our diet, it's just gonna get worse. And if you've had your colon cancer resected and you don't fix your diet, it can come back. And if you wanna know how to best do that, watch the next video.